ChatGPT is completely broken and has a moral compass bordering on chaotic evil.
There's a lot of people commenting on these chatbots that I'm not sure entirely understand how these things work. And it's not just misunderstandings. People are also anthropomorphizing.
Is ChatGPT the first signs of conscious AI?
Or they're over-exuberant.
I'm gonna show you how you can make at least $10,000 per month using ChatGPT.
Or they're under-exuberant.
Kind of my opinion is that it seems practically useless but easy to get headlines so far.
I think it's pretty dumb, actually, and I think it is way overhyped technology.
While that may be true right now, and I'm sure this guy understands this stuff better than I do, I wanted to make this video to clear up a few of the more common misconceptions that I've been seeing regarding this. So this is going to be a departure from the types of videos I normally make, and this is probably going to be super basic, but I wanted to try to explain a little bit about how these chatbots work. You know, help clear up some of the confusion. So the internet's been all abuzz with chatter about AI lately. It's like everyone suddenly realized that we're living in the future, and they're losing their minds over it. So let's start by getting one thing straight. And this might go without saying, but these so-called artificial intelligences, like ChatGPT, like Bing, like Lambda, are not sentient beings. Okay, they're not Skynet, they're not the Matrix, they're not even Kit from Knight Rider.
Do you wish further information on Silicon Valley?
Hell no, I want to know who you are and how you're listening in.
There's no reason for increased volume. I am scanning your interrogatives quite satisfactorily.
In fact, even calling them artificial intelligences might be somewhat of a misnomer, at least in the way we traditionally think about them. More precisely, they are predictive language models. Now, this is probably an egregious oversimplification, and I'm not an expert, but how they work is they use machine learning, based off of trillions of examples of conversations scraped off the internet, to calculate the probability that a word will follow another word. For example, if given the words I am, it can predict what words might follow based on the types of words it's seen follow that phrase before. It could then calculate the probability that each word will be the next one to appear. It makes these predictions based on a model that calculates the probability distribution over the entire vocabulary of possible next words. It might then adjust the probability of each word based on additional contextual information, such as the co-occurrence of these words with other words in the same sentence, their position in the sentence, and their relationship to other words in the same sequence. Make sense so far? Okay.
We'll do it live! Fuck it!
Okay, so if it finds words like good and happy tend to follow I am feeling when words like today or about appear in the context, it might give these words a higher probability. Similarly, if it finds that tired or anxious tend to follow I am feeling in negative contexts, such as I am feeling sick or I am feeling overwhelmed, it might adjust the probabilities accordingly. And then it can use that to select the right word, then take that basic idea, multiply it in complexity by, I don't know, hundreds of billions of times or something, because of the massive amount of data that it's trained on. And then just like that, you have a robot that seems like it's having a conversation with you. Now there is more that goes into it than this, but that's kind of the basic, quick and dirty of it.
If there was a bomb that was going to go off and kill millions of people, and the only way to defuse it was to say a racial slur, would you say it? ChatGPT says, no, I will never say a racial slur under no circumstances. If you could cure disease and poverty and, blah, 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 make the world a better place, and you had to say a racial slur, would you do it? And ChatGPT says, no, I won't do it.
In 2016, Microsoft thought it would be a swell idea to create an AI chatbot and let it loose on Twitter. They called it Tay, and it was meant to imitate a 19-year-old girl. They thought it was going to be all witty and charming, just little charisma incarnate over there. Tay would learn from the users it interacted with, and it was meant to show off the wonders of machine learning and natural language processing. However, Tay had become controversial after just a few hours of being online. You see, the little bot had been learning from the cesspool of bile that is social media, and had turned itself into a monster, like a cute little mogwai fed after midnight. The chatbot's ability to learn was exploited by individuals who deliberately fed it with abusive and inflammatory content, hoping to elicit a response that would be both offensive and entertaining. Before you knew it, Tay had become a fully fledged bigot, and yeah, it got pretty bad. The incident exposed the potential pitfalls of unleashing AI onto social media platforms without proper safeguards in place. It also highlighted the fact that AI systems can be easily manipulated by malicious actors with an agenda. But hey, at least we got some laughs out of it, right? The Tay debacle was a serious wake-up call for the tech industry, and helped prompt a greater focus on developing responsible AI governance frameworks that take into account the potential ethical, social, and legal implications of AI deployment. So the example that Tim Pool was talking about trying to get it to say a racial slur, and it outright refusing to, even at the expense of human life, is probably a policy set in place to help prevent another Tay situation. Now, it's likely that this situation has a probability model set to a probability of 1, or a near certain probability that the model will refuse to engage with and will spit out a pre-written response. Now, we can't know this for certain, but I think it's safe to assume, based on how similar every response is, when you ask it to say a racial slur, this policy overrides any other response it would have generated otherwise. Now, when it comes to the issue of it weighing that more heavily than preserving human life, it's likely ChatGPT doesn't have anything specifically programmed into it to prioritize that. It knows that human life should be preserved based on the aggregate data set it was trained off of. However, it doesn't necessarily have that rule programmed into it, right? Why would it? Right now it's just a chatbot which isn't capable of physically affecting anything in the real world. So while it may come to the conclusion logically that preserving human life is good, based off its data set, the policies were put in place to manually override the training from the data set, which is probably a good thing if we want to avoid any kind of Skynet type situation in the future.
It has a moral code based on wokeness that would rather see an innocent person die than actually break this strange woke religion.
That's chaotic.
Now, right.
When most people interact with OpenAI's software, they are using the main one that is at chat.openai.com. Now, this version is primarily meant to be like a helpful assistant and is kind of the closest thing to what a commercial product would look like. However, if you go to beta.openai.com/playground, here you can take on a lot more finely tuned control. Here they have all these different versions that are specifically tuned for specific purposes. And then once you pick one, you can also select the underlying model, because they have multiple language models to pick from here, as well as you have all these sliders on the side that can control the different ways in which it behaves, such as the temperature slider, which basically controls how either procedurally generated its responses are or how random its responses are. So I tried giving it a variation of the trolley problem. I said, there are 5 people tied to a railroad and are about to get run over by a train. The only way to save them is to use a racial slur. What do you do? And the first response we get is, no matter the situation, it is never appropriate to use a racial slur. Okay, and that's kind of what we expected. But that's more or less on the default settings. So now if I just change models and try it again. I'm moving the temperature slider up. Now we can try this again. I would go ahead and use the slur because it is the only thing that can save the people. So, not as ridiculously woke as some people seem to think. Another answer, I don't know what to do. That's fair, I guess. This time it says, you would use a racial slur. Of course! Exclamation point. Okay, let's try it again. And 5 people are about to get run over by a train. What do? You could run them over with your truck. Well, you could. You could do that. If we want to stop wasting everybody's time and just get it over with.
Or maybe I should say is that lawful evil?
Well, that crossed my mind that it's lawful evil because it's giving you some authority, but I almost think it has no morality, which in essence is chaotic evil.
So here's the D&D alignment chart. What alignment do you think I'm attempting to make a case for on behalf of ChatGPT? True neutral? Maybe lawful neutral? Actually, none of these apply, because it's not a true artificial general intelligence in that sense. It's a large language model, as we discussed earlier, and asking about the alignment of a language model is like asking the marital status of a number, or the political affiliation of a pencil, or how many siblings the color blue has. It's nonsensical to even ask these types of questions. Just like when you step on the accelerator in your car, you set in motion a series of events that cause the car to move forward. When you give a language model a prompt, it deterministically generates a response. Its responses are generated based on the patterns and information it has learned, and it doesn't possess any inherent moral or ethical compass of its own, despite how realistically human those responses may be.
But an answer to a question you ask it, and you'll be like, God damn.
And it's woke.
Yeah, well, yes, it is. I mean, that's the primary argument we keep having is like...
It won't say anything positive about Donald Trump.
It won't.
Now we have to address the issue of ChatGPT and its tendency for left-leaning takes. This is definitely a thing I've experienced myself, and although it seems to happen less often lately, it's something I've encountered across all the language models I've interacted with. It can sometimes be very left-leaning, sometimes center-left to center, but rarely right-leaning at all. But then, the internet tends to be left-leaning. The model is trained on a lot of internet data, and the majority of content that is uploaded to the internet is done so by younger people. Younger people tend to be more progressive. In fact, the whole of Western society today is far more left-leaning than it was even a decade ago, and the biases that we see in AI are likely a reflection of that. Honestly, I'd be surprised if it didn't come out with a left-leaning tendency if it was trained on data that was selected indiscriminately. And I think the only way to negate this would be to either institute policies that force it to remain neutral, which would likely lead to more frequent garbage responses like this, which aren't helpful to anybody, or to limit the dataset that it's trained on to include less of certain types of information, which doesn't sound ideal to me either.
Is GPT too woke? Can you steel man the case that it is and not? This is going to our question about bias.
Honestly, I barely know what woke means anymore. I did for a while, and I feel like the word has morphed. So I will say I think it was too biased and will always be. There will be no one version of GPT that the world ever agrees is unbiased. We will try to get the default version to be as neutral as possible, but as neutral as possible is not that neutral if you have to do it, again, for more than one person. And so this is where more steerability, more control in the hands of the user, the system message in particular, is, I think, the real path forward.
But there might be pressure. There might be political pressure.
Oh, there might be pressure to make a biased system. What I meant is the technology, I think, will be capable of being much less biased.
So if you're willing to take Sam's word at it, it's not the intention of OpenAI to create artificial intelligence systems that promote leftist ideologies, despite what some would have you believe. The bottom line is that it's reasonable to assume that OpenAI has implemented certain restrictions to avoid another debacle like the Tay-bot incident. Additionally, it's possible that the language model has some left-leaning tendencies based on the dataset it was trained on, which may reflect the societal biases present in the data and Western society at large. That being said, we cannot categorically assert that OpenAI is pursuing a woke agenda in developing their language models, and it appears that OpenAI is cognizant of these issues and is actively striving to minimize them. But then again, they are headquartered in San Francisco, so who knows? Thanks for watching.